And then there's this one study out there, I'm just going to read this. The Iceland screens, treats, or prevents multiple myeloma. What a coincidence that this spells StopMM. What is this study? How does this impact everything we've been discussing?
So the country of Iceland has agreed to screen every single person over the age of 50, I believe, for multiple myeloma, to see if we can catch preceding, because almost all patients with myeloma had a preceding MGUS, which is a kind of an indolent, quiet myeloma or a smoldering myeloma.
Okay, you're going to have to tell me what MGUS stands for.
MGUS is monoclonal gammopathy of undetermined significance, which is the myeloma protein in your blood, but it doesn't do any damage to the body. So these people almost never progress to multiple myeloma. They just have a quiet, smoldering state. So Iceland is going to screen every single patient in the country of a certain age to see if they have the protein, to see if they are going to be able to treat myeloma earlier. So what do you think this is going to do? Patients who now are going to have incidental findings of a monoclonal protein who may or may not have multiple myeloma will need to be evaluated, and some will eventually go on treatment. So you're going to have a much larger percentage of patients on therapy. At the end of the day, it's not going to cure their disease, and you're just extending the time that they are on therapy.
You know, why does this remind me of PSA testing for prostate cancer? Everybody gets tested.
Now what?
Lots more men get therapy who may never have needed it.
Right.
Well, I look at this a little bit more optimistically.
Good.
So
Convince
I think that, yeah, I think the key there is early screening. You know, one of the problems that we have today is many of our patients are asymptomatic, and once we finally discover that the patient does have multiple myeloma, they have bone disease, and there are all sorts of other quality of life issues that we have to deal with in addition to the multiple myeloma. So I think the goal of the Black Swan Project in collaboration with the study in Iceland is to screen early. And this is an opt-in screening for Icelanders. And I think it's age 40, because we said before age 50, only about 1% of the population. So the screening begins earlier, and then the patients are segmented into, I think it's 3 different arms of the trial for observation. But, you know, so if we think about MGUS or even asymptomatic, those patients, you're right, they are asymptomatic for a period of time, and then there's a trigger. Then they flip over to become symptomatic, right? So then we treat them. But what is that trigger? Is it an environmental figure? You know, what causes us
or
to?
Maybe there's no trigger at all. They just do it.
Maybe who knows? Who knows? But I think that the overall goal from the International Myeloma Foundation with Black Swan is to say, you know, we get patients way over here. Is there anything that we can do to look at patients earlier on to help possibly put these patients into remission earlier?
You like this?
Or even understand why they hurt.
So I think there's a distinction between there's a big distinction between smoldering myeloma and symptomatic multiple myeloma. Multiple myeloma is the only cancer that requires an end organ symptom for which to start therapy. Breast cancer, you don't need a symptom. You have a lump in your breast, you get chemotherapy. That's the end of it. For multiple myeloma, you need a CRAB criteria, high calcium, renal, anemia, or bony lesions. Now, it's almost like watching your patient for the high-risk smoldering myeloma. So there are patients who you know are going to need therapy because they have such a high burden of disease, but you can't justify treating them because they don't meet the criteria. So it's like watching somebody run toward a cliff and you want to stop them, you know they're going to fall, and that led to the development of slim CRAB criteria, which is basically identifying a subset of high-risk smoldering patients who are almost certainly going to progress. Now, even those patients, when that slim CRAB criteria came out, which was 2.5 years ago, We were already following patients for 5, 6, 7 years who met that slim crab criteria but never progressed. So what is it about patients who never progress and distinguishing them from patients who do progress? What is that triggering event? And that's what this study is going to identify. And the idea is that it's the immune system.
I'll tell you what this tells me. I'm glad you're doing this. This is way too complicated for me. I'll do more surgical related problems and leave this tough stuff to you guys. In the few moments we've got left to us, what I'd like to do is get some final thoughts from each of you. And why don't we talk with you, Cheryl Allen?
Oh, great. Well, thank you so much. Thank you both for a great conversation. When we start thinking about our patients with multiple myeloma, it's a tough disease state for the patient, for the caregiver, and then added on top of that is the therapy that has to be most times infused and oral. So it's a very complicated issue for our patients to deal with. So I think working together in a continuum of care, helping each other to understand from the physician over into the pharmacy and then back to the patient, the supportive caregiver, is our best way to help these patients, because again, we generally get our patients where their disease has progressed. They do live years or decades, but we have a quality of life issue that we have to continually check in with our patients on.
Okay. Dr. Baran, the last word is yours.
Thank you. So I enjoyed this conversation, and I think the fact that we're sitting here and talking is a testament to the progress that we've made for patients with this disease. And in a way, we are lucky to have these problems because there are so many treatment options. And it's just amazing when a patient progresses and they say, well, what else do you have for me? Well, I have a list of 5 options. Or, you know, there's a lot of treatments, and I'm confident that we're going to work together like we did before to make this work.
You know, when I hear you two talk, one, I'm impressed at the brilliance of you both. And something you said just now has real resonance. We wouldn't have been having this conversation 20 years ago, 25 years ago. We didn't have the options. Patients weren't living this long. They didn't cost this much. Mm-hmm. The fact that this is a problem is great. Yeah. I'll take this problem. We'll fix it. Probably. At least we hope we will.
We will.
And if we have people such as the two of you who are working in good faith, that's my most optimistic comment. It's just great. Thank you both for being here. I want to thank you, our viewers, on behalf of our panel and myself for joining us. We hope you found these practice pearls to be useful and informative. I'm Dr. Peter Salgo, and I'll see you next time.